Welcome back to the channel, guys. So for this one, I wanted this to be an explanation video about another cybersecurity subject, tech subject that's good for everybody to know, just for whatever you need it for. In this video, we're going to be touching on cryptography. We're going to just define the overall concept. There are multiple, I guess, like subcategories or subconcepts we could talk about, but I'm going to make individual videos for each of those. But cryptography was something that I personally struggled with when I was trying to get a grasp of that information so I could break into the tech world. And I'm hoping explaining it as an umbrella concept and then breaking down the individual parts of it will make it a little easier to understand, because again, I kind of struggled with it a little bit when I had to get my certifications and stuff for my job. So in this video, I'm going to, like everything else, I'll use a example of cryptography to kind of help paint the picture a little bit better. But at face value, cryptography is the art of keeping information secure by turning it into something that can't be easily understood by unauthorized people. It won't be understood or as easy to understand by people that aren't meant to see it. It's like a secret code type situation, or like if you have a hidden message and that whole thing. And I'm going to give an example that focuses on the hidden message part. So the main way that cryptography works is it's supposed to be like, again, you're supposed to take information that is sensitive and only supposed to be received by specific people, and you kind of dress it up in a way that's unrecognizable, or at the very least is hard for the average person to understand. The example I wanted to run with today, because I just finished binging the Bayverse movies, and also I watched Transformers 1, which was great. So I decided to go with a Transformers example of this whole concept. Now, before I get into the example, I still have to break down the different, I guess, categories that are part of cryptography, and just to give a handful of examples. So when you're talking about cryptography, you're talking about encryption, for one, which is pretty self-explanatory. But again, we'll talk about each of these in their own right. But you have cryptography, or rather, you have encryption, the different types of encryption, symmetric, asymmetric, the different algorithms that are used. Hashing also has algorithms that you can use. Authentication and authorization, which is something we've talked about, just to name a few, are parts of the overall category of cryptography. But the entire point of cryptography, from a more technical, like networking standpoint, of course, is to hide information and to make sure that it's not accessed or altered by people that it's not supposed to be seen by in the first place. When it comes to computer networking and data moving from one place to another, cryptography is also used to make sure that if you're sending like a text message or an email that's very personal between maybe a friend of yours or a partner of yours, when that data reaches from you to them, that whole process in between, it's meant to be encrypted and secured so that other people can't perform, say, a man in the middle attack, or they've rebranded it or renamed it to an on path attack, so that people can't intercept your message when it's on the way to somebody and either change it or just look at it just for the sake of being nosy. And now they have part of your personal information just in their back pocket for whatever reason, whether they use it or not. The example I wanted to run with is a Transformers example from Revenge of the Fallen, where Sam, Michaela, and some of the other characters, they find Jetfire, who was a seeker, I believe, and he used to go out, and I believe seekers' jobs were to find energon for Transformers to, well, they were supposed to go and find planets that had suns, but no habitable life or sentient life on the planets, so that, you know, they could harvest those suns for energon without destroying anybody. Jetfire at some point, I guess, fell asleep on Earth during the war. He was initially a Decepticon but switched to an Autobot, and because of that, he was granted the information, I believe, from some of the past primes or whatever, on where to find the machine that would harvest suns to turn them into energon. He ended up giving this riddle to Sam and his characters, revolving around something called the Three Kings, that would give the location of the machine. But they needed to decrypt that message. It was encrypted in a way. So they had to find out how to decrypt it. And the whole point of encryption in particular is you're not going to be able to undo this code to decrypt this message, if you don't have the tools and knowledge necessary to figure it out. Whether that's something I have to provide you as the one that's giving you the message or giving you the mission, or if you just casually have it in your back pocket. The same way like in anime in general, characters get faced with impossible odds when it comes to the abilities of their opponent. Like say Jujutsu Kaisen, Itadori versus what's that guy's name? The guy that ended up being one of his brothers that we find out later on after the Shibuya incident arc. The guy that he squabbled with in the restroom and had the ability to control his blood. That guy, I can't remember his name, but Itadori didn't even realize why running into the bathroom and getting that guy soaked in water was gonna help him. When Mekamaru had told Itadori to go into the bathroom and basically to get this other guy wet, the guy that ended up being his brother, and Itadori didn't even know why. Mekamaru kind of randomly having that piece of information in his back pocket because he knew how the guy's ability worked, or at least had an idea. That's kind of one of those examples where you kind of just have random pieces of information that you just know for whatever reason, whether it makes sense to your character or not. And now the whole tide of the fight just changed, or at the very least it just balanced out. That's kind of how that works, or at least that's a piece of it. But going back to the Three Kings riddle, the only reason that Sam and his team were able to figure out the Three Kings riddle, which led them to the Matrix of Leadership, was because, partially due to his brain being fried from the Allspark shard that he had. He just so happened to have information about the Three Kings as far as the stars. He was talking about how they had Orion's belt right in front of them. They also had the three pyramids that lined up with it. And Michaela just made a side comment trying to get him to confess that you love me. Why can't you just tell me you love me? And she unknowingly helped him solve the riddle, and it all just clicked. And with that information in his back pocket, knowing that Orion's belt is also known as the Three Kings, he was able to figure out where the machine was located. And the whole MacGuffin, as far as the Matrix of Leadership, was found, and the story progressed from there. That's an example of decrypting information that's given to you in a way that's jumbled or is presented in a way that's mysterious. And that's the whole thing with cryptography. There are multiple different ways. Again, you have hashing algorithms, you got encryption and decryption algorithms, you got digital signature, you have authentication, authorization. You have these different ways that fall under cryptography, but they all center around the same concept of, I have information that's meant only for a certain person or certain people. So if you are not that person or people's, then you have no business knowing how to unscramble this message and figure it out what it is I'm trying to tell you. That's the whole premise of cryptography. Again, we'll talk about the individual parts of cryptography as far as encryption, decryption, the different types of encryption, maybe different hashing algorithms. I don't know about that yet. But just wanted to explain the overall concept. And another reason I wanted to define this concept is because there's something else that some people may think is part of cryptography that's actually not, which is called obfuscation. And I'll talk about that in its own video. But I will say this, and I had to figure this out myself. Cryptography and its different versions underneath it versus obfuscation are two different things. So we'll dive more into that later. But as for now, that is cryptography explained. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have any comments, feedback, suggestions, anything like that for me, go ahead and share that with me in the comment section below. See you guys in the next one.